many folks here have a full management team for your company? No, which is normally true. And I've heard a lot of that. Actually, this is ideal for many of you. So generally, if founders get together and then one of them wants to become the CEO, one of them's the CTO, and then there's some other pieces and parts that you have to deal with. Okay, and I'm going to get this out of my way. Out of here, so that you can see. We get this chief operating officer, the chief marketing officer, sometimes the chief sales officer, chief financial officer, and chief legal officer. Any other C's that I forgot?
Innovation officer. Innovation officer.
Chief innovation officer? Or
Yeah.
Okay.
One of those imaginary made-up ones.
You know what I'm missing up there? The CTO.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've got CDOs now too. Chief Data Officer,
Chief data officer, it used to be the chief information officer.
CIO.
Yeah, see, this was a test for all of us to see if I forgot something. So that like balance that slide out nicely too, so I didn't put the CTO up there. And that's pretty embarrassing, because I'm probably more the CTO kind of guy, but I'm running the company right now, so. Sometimes what happens is one of the founders decides he or she is really good at being the CEO, okay? Or just defaults to being the CEO because they're probably the one that started the company, right? And originally, and then started gathering people around them. But oftentimes, they're probably not the best CEO. Maybe they're the best CTO, or the CFO, or the COO. But oftentimes, the original founder is probably not the best CEO. Have you ever seen this? You've seen this happen. And sometimes you just gotta cut loose and let somebody else do all that day-to-day CEO kind of stuff. And to tell you the truth, for me, and for probably many of you, that's just fine. Let somebody else do that, right? Let somebody else take care of the hiring, firing, the messing with all of the personnel issues and the scheduling issues and this issue and that issue. Be the thing that you do the best, right? And sometimes you have to hire a CEO. Did you see the movie The Intern? It was recently. And so, the idea was that she was probably a really good CTO, and the board encouraged her to hire a CEO, all right? Actually, I thought Robert De Niro would make a pretty good CEO, but that didn't seem to come to bear. But it was one of those things that I've seen as probably one of the Achilles heels of many companies, is a person who's really not good at being a CEO wants to be the CEO because they founded the company. All right? If I were, the power position, as you've seen in a lot of industries, is they move up and become the chairman of the board. Now they're really in charge of everything. And so now they're still in charge of everything, but they don't have to do the day-to-day stuff, okay? And like Bill Gates, what did he do? I think he became the chairman of the board, and then he still went in there and messed with the code. He probably went down and bugged his product
Chief Creative Officer.
The what?
He did the term Chief Creative Officer.
The Chief Creative Officer? The CCO. Well, I call that, actually I've been a CCO, but it's Chief Capital Officer. So, but that's good. So he was in, I didn't know he had a title like that.
Yeah, he just went after new technology, that's all he did.
Okay, that's good. Well, that was a good position. So so what else do we have? So then we have to add directors, okay? We don't have to add directors, but oftentimes as we get bigger, we will have a board of directors. In a non-public company, that's not required, by the way. So you don't really have to have a board of directors. That is a fiduciary responsibility, and I'll tell you, it's harder to find directors than, The one we just spread around. And, go ahead, jump in here. Don't sit in the back, please. Go on.
I'm going around.
And, mix yourself in here with the group. And, there you go. Hi, Ken.
How are you?
Hi, and you come as guest for these folks?
Yes.
+1 became +2. That's good. That's all right. I would encourage you all to try to come, everybody, come at least by 10 after, because that's when we start the introductions. You don't want to really miss those, because that's a good opportunity. And while I'm on my soapbox, what is also very important is many of you have not completed your profile, and you've not completed your introduction. You're really missing a great opportunity to advertise, okay? Because when you first check in, here you are with nothing underneath you, okay? And then you sign up for a meetup, and there you are with nothing underneath you. And so how's anybody gonna know, hey, that sounds cool, I wanna go and meet that person, and, oh, you're that guy, I wanna talk to you about that. See, so you're really missing a great opportunity for advertising, so don't miss it.
So that's something we have to do every meetup, because I noticed, I've done it before, but I noticed I don't have something there.
You don't? You did
For each
before.
Yeah, I
group.
did it before.
You do?
So each meetup, you have to do it again.
No, you don't have to do it every time. I don't either. See, so for some reason, this particular.
So this view isn't showing it.
This doesn't show that.
Okay, it's the tablet,
If you go in a different view, it'll show you all.
on the desktop.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a good
Sorry.
point, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
And by the way, if you're in that view, you can just sit.
I didn't see
edit
that.
edit your introduction, by the way.
Oh, wait, it's not.
So don't miss that opportunity. Because we are, as startups, we're advertising 24/7, okay? And don't forget, what you're doing on Facebook is also gonna be seen by people who want to connect with you as well. But that's a different story. So what I would say that the best way to enlarge your view to the world is the world is going to be looking at your management team very carefully, is advisors. Advisors are a great way to build your team without requiring somebody to come in for a heavy-duty job, okay? So are you advisors or CxOs or what are
No,
you?
we were with Germany.
I know.
Yeah.
How
They're
are you?
It's our
partners.
first time, yeah.
Partners.
Yeah.
Hmm?
Well, partners.
Partners,
It's a
okay, so you're all
collaborative.
partners, very good, very
So,
good. So you'll have to kind of divvy up these seats.
that's why we're here, to put
That's
the
good.
enterprise together, and all
Okay.
of the board members executively should know.
Okay, very good, okay. So, in a nonprofit, yes, the board is much more, is important, but just like in a public company.
Yes, sir.
But so I didn't want to diminish that for you, this group here. But the advisors it's a nice way to entree because you don't have a fiduciary responsibility. It means you're not responsible for the legal, financial aspect of the company. Responsible, and you can be very influential, but you're not gonna be sued unless somebody just wants to sue you, but it's not gonna stick, okay? And then the other thing that I recommend is that you don't overwork your advisors, all right? Bring your advisors on and ask them for, a couple hours a month. Ask them questions. Don't get them together and waste a bunch of time in meetings. Get together and, call them. Your advisors are there, they're listed, they've got the great resumes that you can utilize, and then you can call them and ask them questions. I've got 8 advisors. I call them and ask them questions. If we have a project that they can work on, then they come on and we have a billing rate, the whole 9 yards.
Do they get paid?
Hmm?
Do they get paid, if so, how? Or percentage? Or
Okay, we'll get down to compensation.
Okay.
I particularly, for my advisors, I have a pool of money that it's a 10%, and then we share that according to their rank in the advisor status. We have baseline advisors, we have an advisory team, and then we have managers. But anybody that works on a project is an equal partner. Okay? So if I just call them on something, that's one thing. So that's kind of a unique way of doing things, but it works great. And it also has people that came on board without, they were sort of eased their way into the whole process, okay? Also, other people that could be on your team are coaches. They're a very important part of your team. You can hire coaches, you can encourage them to come on for equity, and we have some compensation plans for all kinds of people. Virtual assistants, they can be integral into how your team is functioning. And also interns. This is summertime, and I'm sure you're working on that aspect with the folks that you're working on, but there's still some, I'm sure there's some excellent college and high school students even who haven't been, dubbed to be an intern for you. And then there's also throughout the year too. So talk to your favorite professors. If you don't know them, call the deans of the school that you're most interested in, and see if you can get some intern or an intern to help you out. Okay, the next thing is the compensation plan. All right, and this was supposed to work a lot easier, but for some reason the interface here is not working the way I had suspected. So they changed everything. So compensation plans for. By the way, there is a handout called the CCC Steps handout.prospersystems.biz. You can download that, print it off, and that has a lot of this information. Okay, the CxOs, you're going to, one of the things that investors, even lenders, and anybody else who's going to be putting money into your company is going to look at is how greedy are your CxOs? Okay. So if you start blasting in there with a $200,000 a year salary of some kind, that's not going to work out. Just come in and pay the bills. All right, don't buy the boat yet. Pay the bills. Then work your way up as the profits grow and your salaries can grow. And I'll tell you, that's going to work better for everybody because you'll have some extra money. You'll have more money to work with and pay some of these other folks that we've talked about. But you've also will look good in the eyes of anybody who's going to be putting money into the system. All right. And if you have any questions, just jump in here at any time. So what I suggested is that you work towards whatever salary that you're going to work towards when you think you've stabilized. You're up there where you're either asymptotic, you're going to stay on some sort of a flat point, or you've reached the point where you're be for sale. That's when your salaries can go to the point where your goal salaries, okay? It could be 200,000, it could be 500,000, whatever it turns out to be. Now, obviously, if somebody comes on board and they're bringing some additional intellectual property, or perhaps this whole group of clients, they're probably going to demand a little bit more than the other person who's just in there, helping to make the thing go. All right. So there's sweat equity, and then there's raw resource that somebody can bring in, and you're going to have to adjust accordingly. All right. And there's, there are industry standards that you can work with. You can look at all the surveys and see what a reasonable salary is going to be for a person. But remember, that's your goal salary. That's what you're going to work up to when you get up to the profitable level. Now, what do you offer directors and advisors? Okay, that was your question. Okay, so a typical advisor is going to make $30,000 to $50,000 a year, all right? And a typical director, $50,000 to $100,000, depending on the company. All right? So, how do you figure what kind of compensation you're going to come up with? Obviously, initially, what you want to offer is something that doesn't cost you anything out of pocket. Equity. is a good thing to do. Okay. On a nonprofit, that's not gonna work, but you've gotta have. So of the equity in your company, so how do you figure how much equity to give them? 1%, 5%? No, that's way too much. What you figure is how much would you pay them as an advisor or a director down the road, all right? And then figure that in comparison to your net profit. All right, so if you were to do income sharing or profit sharing, how would that work out as a percentage? So say, let's just make an easy number. Say you're gonna get $1 million, you're having $1 million net profit, all right? And you figure a director is gonna command $100,000. What's the percentage?
Can you say that again?
Hmm?
Can you say that again?
$100,000 salary compared to $1 million profit.
It's late in the day, Sam, you give them a break.
That's what?
It's late in the day, give them a break.
You what?
It's late in the day.
This is nasty background noise here, so you never.
It's late in the day, give them a break.
Oh, yeah, it's late in the day. Okay, all right. I think it's 1% if I'm not mistaken. Is that true? No, it's 1/10%. What is it? Come on, somebody.
Yeah,
can-
100.
Huh?
It's 100, I swear.
It's okay, with $1,000, it'd be 1,000th of a million, so 100,000 is going to be 1/10 of 1,000, so it's 0.0001, 1/100th of a percent. It doesn't sound like a bunch, but look at it. You know, the company's worth that much, and you've got that much of a profit distribution every year, then you should be, you know, that's your compensation. Now, or you can do part of that and say then we're going to substitute salary down the road as well, okay? So be as creative as you can, and, but make the back end better than a straight salary. So if you can make the back end look better than a straight salary, you'll be better off. Yes, ma'am?
So just to summarize, if you decide how much for the position like that's down the road, so it depends on their position,
Yeah,
and you're kind of doing a projected calculation for down the road,
Mhm.
right? Okay,
Right,
I just
right.
want to
Just-
know there.
yeah, just take that as a ratio to the net, potential net profit, okay?
Well, and Ken, I think you said the scenario you just went through is a for-profit where the valuations are gonna be large, but
Yeah.
not for non-profit. So is there-
Non-profits, you've got a special, you know, deal that you've got to work with. And so you've got to work your way up to the percentage, and then equity is just not going to cut it.
That's a different
Non-profit.
process, right? This is all for-profit, right?
Yeah, I mean, that kind of a compensation concept is for.
Deferred compensation work? Would a deferred compensation agreement work? So like, say 30 grand a year as an advisor, when we get that money in the bank, then we'll go back and pay people for the
Yeah.
time that they contributed.
You have to be careful if you're a principal and not an employee that would involve labor relations, and you'd be running afoul of those rules. But if they're a principal, then you can use a deferred compensation plan.
You can't do that for what kind of employees?
For a normal employee, and certainly not a contract employee or an intern.
A percentage you're talking.
No, deferred compensation plan.
Oh, deferred compensation, okay. Yeah, and deferred compensation, I would stay away from, because that's what you're doing is you're creating a debt. You don't want to create a debt. What you want to create is incentive to make money. And when the money's made, then you get paid. If the money's not there, you're not gonna get paid. All right, now, obviously, you don't expect to get paid for 2 years because you're developing something that's gonna, has a 2-year cycle. You're gonna have to get creative, okay? But remember, if you make the back end very large, then you can, then there's a big carrot to run to. All right. So equity can be used in that way. Now, for anybody else that gets involved, then you're going to want to, keep the fees as reasonable as possible. Now, for instance, as a consultant, I like bill paying kind of fees, right? And then if, somebody is just really, they have little money. If they have no money, then we don't have much to talk about. If they have little money, then we can do some pretty skinny fees and put some equity in there, right? But working for pure equity as a consultant is not a really good idea. And for most people who are service providers, you're not gonna find that. I've tried that. I probably have lots of certificates on my wall. I think I own about 3% of them, with potentially about $2 billion worth of companies. But I still haven't bought the boat yet. So, and then the other thing that I've got up here is that you just don't want to promise a percentage. Carte blanche. Okay? There needs to be some sort of a vesting system involved. Okay, so if you're going to promise, if you're a co-founder, 5, 10, 15%, whatever it turns out to be, that needs to be vested. You need to be vested. Everybody needs to earn through activity until they get to the point where they've gone through say a 2-year process of ramping up to where now they've got the full percentage that's been offered in the profit pool. Okay, so don't forget that. Just offering, say, hey, okay, everybody gets 5%. That's cool. Make sure that it's vested process. And okay, any questions up to this point? Yes, sir.
What do you think about cliffs, and what do you like for a vesting schedule? You said 2 years. Do you have a 1-year cliff? If they leave in the first year, they don't get equity, those kind of things?
Oh, you're talking about leaving after, well, that's all about arm wrestling.
Shrug.
Yeah, I think, it's all gonna be based on your kind of, if you're a development business and you've got a long development, now, it's a nice thing, and much of what goes on here is virtual development, right? That can happen pretty rapidly. But if you're developing, now, let me see, don't you have a product, John, that you're developing?
Yes.
Okay, is that a physical product?
It is.
Yeah, and what's the development time on that?
2 years.
2 years, okay. So he's got a 2-year project, you may have a 6-month project. So you two are gonna have a different way of looking at investing and cliffs. And, if you leave after 3 months, that's about the same as leaving after a year for you, see? So trying to create a time frame. What you have to do is figure the ramp up period, and then find some happy medium, either a third or a half, that if you don't stay for that long, then it all goes away. And but the biggest problem with and we talked about this a little bit last time, is when you're setting up your team, when you're setting up the whole company, you're gonna have agreements with everybody, right? And do those up front. Okay. I remember when I first started as a software consultant many years ago, that I actually ran into one guy who referred me to another guy, and one guy was a service provider to the other guy. Then they wanted to go, and he was gonna invest some money and develop this new project, and so we sat down, we talked about it, and I said, okay, well, I'll get the contract together for you guys. Oh, we don't need a contract. Well, guys, that's all fine and dandy, but you have spouses, and you have boards of directors, you have other employees, you have all these things. I tell you what, I looked at the one guy who was my chief client, and I said, hey, can I borrow $5? He said, yeah, sure. And I said, just sign a check and hand it to me. He said, well, that wouldn't be smart. I said, yeah, let's do the contract. Because even though he trusts me and he knows where to find me, he's not gonna give me a blank check, is he? That was just this inspiration that came out. I don't know where, I'd never heard of it before. I just tried it. It worked. I said, let's do the contract. They said, okay. So, make sure that you have all of that upfront in writing. And it sounds sort of like a prenup, you know, and that's kind of, you know, can kind of mess up, you know, certain relationships. But if you're in a business relationship, do business contracts. Get everything on paper. Then there's no question about what is going on, right? All
So
right.
you have your advisors sign the contract?
Hmm?
You have advisors sign contracts?
Yeah, I have contracts with my advisors.
Do
It
you make them
includes the
sign
billing
NDA?
rate, how much time they owe me, how they're compensated in the future, et cetera.
Do you make them sign an NDA as well?
Yes. The NDA is a non-disclosure. Now, you can have an NDA that's a paragraph long, it doesn't have to be a little thing. I've got one that I send out to people that don't have one, and it says, you know, we're not gonna disclose about each other, we're not gonna, you know, circumvent, we're not gonna compete, and if we sue each other, it's gonna be in the location of the defendant. And it's gonna be for 1 year after we stop doing business. One paragraph, that's it, it's reasonable, right? We can also state this in this, you know, laws of Colorado, et cetera, that's a thing that could be in there, but, you know, then if they got some longer thing that they wanna do, the lawyers will review, we'll sign it. It's always a good
You
thing.
wanna define the relationship so you don't have, an advisor who, you know, gives you 5 minutes of their time and then owns 0.003% of your company and never talks to you again. So, it's part of the vesting, like, you have to talk to us for a set period of time every month and be actively involved and, you know, refer us and be amicable and things like that.
Right. That's right.
For nonprofits, is it typical to do the contract with the advisors or directors or what?
You know, a nonprofit is still a business. There's money flowing through it, you know, you've got legal responsibilities. You don't wanna, you know, just because you're all getting together and doing wonderful things, doesn't mean that everything's gonna stay wonderful. So get your contract. You know, it's not a contract, I like to call it agreements. All you're doing is documenting an agreement. The contract aspect sounds rigid, legal, that kind of stuff. You're gonna have legalese in it, but the agreement is really what you want. So you can start out with some bullet points. You're gonna do this, I'm gonna do this is how we make money. Okay, this is how you're compensated, this is how we're compensated, et cetera. Bullet points, then we can work that into a contract. But if you don't have those basic agreements sat down, you know, then somebody's gonna say, well, I thought. How many times have you heard that? Well, I thought, you know. And whether you're starting something up or you're finishing something up, you know. Well, I was divorced many years ago, and the first thing I did is I sat down, okay, this is what we're agreeing to. This is the basis of our separation. Okay? I'm gonna do this, you're gonna do that. Okay, so worked through that, and then some lawyer got involved. It took 3.5 years, and we finally sat down and we just basically agreed to the very same thing that we agreed to on day one, and we told both our lawyers this is what it's gonna be, and we're done. And we done that on day one, but it saved us about $5,000 each, so. So that was kind of funny. Anyway, I digress. Okay, now the important thing is where are you gonna find people that can be part of this team? Okay. I've got some suggestions. Networking. You're in a room here with potential partners. Okay. You've already got some potential partners, but there's anytime you go someplace, you're looking at potential collaborators of some kind. Now I'm going to digress just a tad here. Anybody in this room who's had any positions of responsibility, whether it's a CxO or an executive, they have something to offer you. Everybody in this room has something to offer everybody else. Okay? In terms of their experience. So I can say, sit down with Tom here, and we can rap about 4 or 5 or 6 things, and I think you even have a list about a couple of things that we want to rap about, right? So we'll rap about them, and we'll learn from each other, and we'll co-counsel each other, number one. Okay, that's a good start, right? Then that can become an advisory relationship. where they like your deal, so you advise somebody else. And you can all do that no matter how busy you are, what you're doing, because you'll learn from it. I guarantee it, you'll learn from it by helping somebody else in their process. You go, wow, I hadn't thought of that. You know, you come up with these blissful ideas and you say, I can put that in my company. Okay? So put yourself out there, and you do that a lot. I think everyone I've met here, I know, either looks like, I haven't met you very well, but I know that will be valuable too. So start out that way. Start by figuring out where you can help each other out. Then move to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. So advisor, director,